All right, guys, we got JD's first co-hosting episode. Very excited about it, and we got Mr. Mike Hemby on here. Mike's got a lot of stuff going on, man, and it's going to be very interesting to hear about it. Big butt killer going to Africa. So for anybody that doesn't agree with it, stop listening now because we are going to talk about it. So, Mike, what's up, dude?
Yeah, not a lot. Funny enough, I live pretty close to where both of you are at. I moved back to Atlanta like a year ago, and I was just kind of looking and starting to look around, on Facebook and social media of people that shared the same passion. I came across both of you. We started messaging on social media, and then just last weekend, JD popped down and we shot up some targets a little bit and got to hang out in person. And yeah, just excited to be on here and share some stories and talk about plans for this year. And I'm kind of I love listening to what you guys are doing because I'm kind of a gear junkie too and love tinkering and messing with different things and broadheads and arrows and spines and setups. So every time I hear you guys start getting on a rant, I geek out a little bit. So
You know that's going to happen. You know when the two of us are talking about that stuff, man, it's a rabbit hole that we basically live in. So,
Yep.
yeah, man. So JD, what?
Yeah.
I never asked you this. How did you guys run into each other? Like, what was the whole story about that?
Uh, if I remember correctly, it was honestly on social media. It was just, either I reached out to him or he reached out to me. I honestly can't remember. But it was just one of those things. We hit it off. We realized that we lived literally 10 minutes from each other and just started talking back and forth. And we decided that, we had to shoot together at some point and, eventually probably, go on a hunt trip together at some time. And then,
JD, I think what it was is you posted a picture of a buck in velvet, and I thought it was the same buck that I had. I got a 2-acre section here in suburbs north of Atlanta, and I was like, dang, I don't know where he is. I know he's close to me. I thought it was the same buck. Ended up not being the same buck, but it got us talking a little bit more and realized that you used to live like a mile down the road and now don't live too far away. So
yeah, that might have been it.
Y'all Atlanta boys. What am I going to do with
Oh,
you? Yeah, I'm all the way out here east of Atlanta in the sticks. So y'all with your giant Seek 1 level deer and us with our little southern coos deer over here.
well, I sent you
Yeah.
guys that trail cam, that trail cam picture I saw. I think I sent it to both of you.
Yep.
Was literally that night before I sent it to you, and it's the first time I'd seen him on camera, and I was just jacked.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
JD sent me a picture of it, and I was like, "Yo, is that on your property?" And he was like, "No, it's Mike's." I'm like, "Damn it!" I'm so excited. I'm like, "Dude, we hunt there." But
Yep.
that buck wasn't that far from his spot, was it? I don't think. Or am I thinking wrong?
It was JD. That buck literally was 20 yards from where my target is that we were shooting the other day.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Which is only about 8 minutes from my house. So no, it's not far.
I'll tell you guys what, the other thing that intrigued me, so I actually went back when I started listening to the Southeastern Bowhunter. I didn't start from the most recent stuff. I love hearing how people start the podcast and how that grows. So I went back and listened from episode 1 and 2, and then started jumping around to different episodes with different guests that I like. And what intrigued me the most is my story wasn't too different from where you guys are at. And it's, I grew up hunting in Michigan, from Michigan originally, did my undergrad and grad school there. And I mostly just gun hunted. And where I was at, you couldn't even rifle hunt, right? I had to use a muzzle loader because it was in a shotgun zone. So if you wanted to shoot past 80 yards, you were using a muzzle loader. And I had a bow and I'd go out once a season, maybe here or there. And then I got into college and bought my own bow and hunted a little bit. And when I moved down to Atlanta in 2012, I literally I didn't hunt much down here. I would only go I'd hunt a little bit in some of the WMAs, a little bit further west. And the next thing you know, I'm just flying back to Michigan to hunt with my brothers on 20 acres that I own up there for opening day of gun season. And that was it. So it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years ago that a buddy of mine says, "Hey, let's go out to Kansas." And I'm like, "Okay, let's go." So that year we planned it for the next year, but the year before, which I think would have been 19, I I got that bow back out, got it restrung, and I went out to that property in Michigan and killed my first buck off that property and my first buck with a bow. But it wasn't anything but, 80 inches, maybe something like that. And then I kind of got the bug, and we decided to go to Kansas the next year. Which JD, you saw that mount here in the house. It's for Kansas. It's not a big deer, but at the time it was by far my biggest buck with a bow. It scores like 115-ish, maybe a little bit more than that. And after that, it was just like this addiction. And last year was by far the most successful year that I had, 2022. And I had 7 deer, 5 bucks across 3 different states. 2 from Michigan, 1 from Georgia, and 1 from Alabama. And 4 of those were all my biggest deer to date, except this one, Kansas one. So they were all, somewhere, not giants, right? But for me, it's the next step of going from, scrub bucks to then letting bucks pass and shooting things that are getting to a 3.5-year-old, which for me was the oldest deer that I'd killed to that point, except this Kansas deer. So last year, I was 4 bucks, three of them with the bow, and 5 bucks, 3 of them with the bow that were all over, 105 inches or so across a couple different states. And it was just a really cool experience. And we got drawn for Kansas this year. So me and 3 buddies are going back out to Kansas. And man, it's a riot. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to hunt out there, but it is absolutely wild.
Yeah, we actually were planning on doing a Colorado hunt next year. And so I'm kind of trying to get all that to work out. And then we just got actually invited by Thor Nichols to go with him in 2 years to go up and hunt Illinois. I mean, I've driven through Kansas, but I've only ever hunted in Georgia, but I'm trying to get away from that. So, and I know JD and we were actually just talking before you got on here about, those trips and what we could do, whether or not we're going to be able to make them happen. And I mean, they're going to happen eventually. Our biggest
Well, man,
thing
you can do them on the cheap too. You don't have to spend a bunch of money. If you're willing to tent or pull a camper or any of that kind of stuff, you don't got to spend a boatload of money to make it happen, especially in some of these states like even Ohio, right? It's a top 5 big buck state, but the over the counter tag is like $200 compared to, Kansas is like a $500 tag. So it's a little more reasonable, a little bit closer to home, but still a big buck state.
Yeah, so I told him about the Nebraska mule deer hunt that they have, I think in September, about how the over the counter tag is like $200. And I think for Colorado, it's like 450 or something like that. I'm not going to say they're both the same distance, but I'm kind of in a sense leaning more towards the Nebraska hunt just because I know guys that have done it. I'm willing to literally live out of the truck for a week. I don't care about any of that. Like if I go on a hunting trip and say money's an issue for it, dude, I don't need a 5-star 4-season hotel. I can stay in a Motel 6 and sleep on a bed that a hooker and some pimp was on the night before. I don't care.
Dude, my brother-in-law and 6 buddies just went out to Colorado elk hunting this year, and they just had an old canvas army tent and a couple little heater buddies, and they, a decent sleeping bag, and they were perfect. So no lodging costs. Doesn't Nebraska have maybe it's not Nebraska. I thought that was a big game state that if you buy a tag, it's kind of opportunistic that if you see a whitetail, you can hunt whitetail, or if you see a mule deer, you can hunt mule deer. Doesn't Nebraska have that?
Yep, that's both. And Chris B did a video on it a couple years ago that him and one of his buddies, I think Chris killed a muley and his friend killed a whitetail within like 2 minutes of each other. Now it's not always going to be like that, obviously, but seeing that, having a few friends that have done it, and it just seems more affordable. Now, I was telling JD earlier, I don't know anything about hunting deer in the plains. I've only ever hunted, in a ground blind or a tree stand. I've tried on the ground stuff, but out here it's so thick you can't see anything. So I don't know. It's definitely something to try. I mean, Seek One just went out to Kansas last year and killed that big deer. So I mean, it's something on the list for sure. We just got to make it happen.
Well, so just to talk a little bit about that, in Kansas, we were in Western Kansas. We were lucky to find a tree to be able to put a tree stand in. And we had to learn how to hunt completely different because where we hunt in Michigan was all kind of like timber lots, ag fields, things like that. I shot my deer out of a tree stand. I rattled him in. He came into a decoy that we had put out just to mess around with at 18 yards. But my buddy that shot a 142 that was out there, we saw him running in a tilled up field with no crop in it, no reason to be there with a doe. And he was in like a quarter acre little section of a tree line, and we saw him bed down. So we checked the wind, went up to the next country road, and we were about 1,000 yards away, and we saw him through the binos, and it's all rolling hills, so you can't see a whole lot. So we grabbed our stuff, and we just started sprinting across this open field. It was WEHA, which for Kansas, it's walk-in hunting. It's essentially a state program where they lease land from private landowners to then use for public hunting, mostly archery and pheasant and things like that. But we got to about 250 yards, and then there was no more cover. There's some CRP fields. We were essentially using the terrain and the topography, and this buck was bedded down, and we crawled the last 250 yards over about an hour and a half to 2 hours, with him a few steps in front of me and me behind him, and I'm standing up and trying not to get seen. And we spot and stalked this deer, got to the edge of the CRP, and I think he heard us, but he didn't know what we were. We had the wind in our face, so we were in a good position, but he didn't want to let that doe go. And he stood up and got up and just raked the hell out of some branches, started breaking shit, stomping his foot, and he started coming right at us. And my buddy was up on one knee, was able to draw at like 15 yards as the buck was essentially coming for a fight because he thought we were another deer, straight frontal, whitetail adrenaline style. And I watched this deer take off. And I'll tell you what, we were dragging that deer out in Kansas in the sunset, and some of the pictures from that's 142. It's like a mainframe 10, but a split G2 like crab claw. And it is one of the coolest deer and the best hunting experience. My only real spot and stalk that I've done. And it was just absolutely incredible. I didn't even kill the deer. It was my buddy's deer, but that experience was just absolutely incredible. So if you get a chance to put a spot and stalk on an animal like that, that 10 seconds when a deer walks in before you pull back and let go, it's like that for the full 2 hours that we were crawling through the CRP field.
So JD, we need to change our trip.
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it does.
Well, but Western Nebraska is the same type of terrain. A lot of people, when they don't draw for Kansas, they'll go OTC in Nebraska. So it's the same type of experience, except the tag's less expensive, and you get the best of both worlds. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to go like after something, more Western, or say like, I guess more Midwestern, because I'm from Illinois. So, seeing those Midwestern bucks, comparing them to the ones down here, they're definitely bigger body wise. I know there's not 150-inch deer behind every single corner. I mean, that's just the truth. But something about a mule deer, I'm set on going after a muley. I don't know what it is.
There's something about a mule deer that is just, it has sex appeal for days. Maybe it's because we don't see them, but whenever I see one on camera or watch a video of it, I get the itch. I actually just put in this year, me and four buddies put in for Utah elk, Utah mule deer, and then Montana, which is it's Montana, which is a big game tag, which is kind of the best of both worlds, right? You can you have it, and I think you can shoot an elk, a muley, or a whitetail. Whatever you see opportunistic, that's what you're going after. And I got the itch too, man. I got the itch.
Well, wow, we need to scratch it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we do.
Man, so you were talking about tinkering and stuff like that. Yeah, I am very curious what your setup is. JD told me that you're big on or actually, no, you know what? He did tell me some stuff about your setup, but I do remember you sending me some pictures and everything about some broadheads you're trying out. I think it was this season, right? Aren't there some new broadheads and all that you're looking at?
Yeah, there's a couple groups that I've got a chance to know through a buddy's podcast and this trip for Africa that are smaller brands, all made in the U.S. that are kind of starting out. And just through some connections, I'm getting a chance to try some stuff before it hits the market. And I can talk a little bit about that with Triple Point. But my setup in general, I'd never really bought a brand new bow, right? I'm a left-handed shot. It's kind of hard to find stuff. It
Wow.
wasn't until that Kansas, or after that Kansas trip, that I said, you know what? I love this. I got to take this for real. So I got on Archery Talk on the forum and tried to find somebody's last year bow. So I bought, at the time, this guy was selling two Matthews V3s, a 31-inch axle to axle, and it was left-handed. And I was like, hey, that sounds pretty good. You know, normally what, $1,400. He used it for a year, and you know, that was it. And I bought it for like $800, right, with the stabilizer. And then I went and got it set up up in Canton, and at the time, you know, I put a drop away rest on there, and I was just shooting it was a vertical 5-pin actually. So it was like a
Wow.
stacked 5-pin, but it was still
Yeah.
your typical, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50. Um, and you know, I had a heavy arrow set up by accident. I didn't really know enough at the time. I just asked the guy at the archery shop, like, look, I'm getting into this. What do you recommend? Um, and he sold me on some FMJs, right? Some full metal jackets. And at the time, I didn't really know any better. And I slapped 125 grain broadhead on the front and a lighted knock on the back. And I was shooting like 508 last year. The problem is with those FMJs, as you guys probably know, if you're trying to get any amount of FOC, yeah, my arrow weight's good at 508, but it eats up all of that front of center.
Mhm.
And I had success, right? I mean, I told you I killed 7 deer last year, a couple good bucks with bow. My biggest bucks with the bow in Alabama and in Georgia, and it was a fun season. It was a great year. And then it wasn't until so I was hunting in Georgia last year, and I have all this Michigan gear, and I was sweating my ass off in September. So I started looking at different camo companies, and I found one. And I know you guys do some work with Osio, so I won't drop names and things here, but it was a different group that has really, really lightweight gear. And it was I was like, okay, let me try this out. Well, I'd posted a couple pictures on their field staff page, and I got a message from the CEO. And he's like, hey, we're going to Africa. Is that something, you know, I'd like you to come with us. You've sent some good pictures. It looks like you've had some success. You know, you're in the Georgia area, but you've also, you know, you've hunted the Midwest a bit. If you're interested, let me know. And so we can get into that in a minute, but that's when I really started getting into my arrow setup, because I'm like, okay, I got to pay more attention to this, because I was shooting, that FMJ was a 340 spine, 120, you know, 125 on the front. And you know, I did the same thing you guys did, right? I dug into some of T-Bone stuff. I dug into some Ranch Fairy stuff, and I started doing other research on my own. I started testing some things. And I read a bunch of the, you know, page after page of the Ashby work, and made my own assumptions. And I'm a physical therapist. I have a doctorate in physical therapy. I'm board certified in orthopedics. So anatomy is kind of like my thing. So, you know, diving into shot placement and organs and the skeletal structure, and how an arrow is going to impact that. It's, you know, I kind of geek out on that from an anatomy perspective. And so right now my arrow setup is I'm shooting Sirius Apollo arrows, which is, you know, obviously that's where T-Bone does some stuff with. I didn't know that at the time. I was just looking for a group that had a high quality product. It's a little pricey, but at the time I was really trying to find something that was going to be reliable in Africa on a kudu that, you know, could be 600 pounds, somewhere in the 400 to 600 pound range, and a Gims buck again in the 4 to 550 range, mostly plains game animal. So right now, my weight that I'm taking to Africa is about 625, with it's a 250 spine, 100 grain insert on the front, plus 150 grain broadhead on the front, which ends up getting me to rate about 17% FOC. And I do have 4 fletch on the back, just to give me a little more, just because it's such a heavy arrow and so more weight. Everybody that I was talking to and the research on it was like, yeah, it might be a little overkill. It's going to hurt your FOC, but it's going to give you a little more room for error, you know, if something happens to happen from a steering perspective. So, so yeah, that's largely what I'm running as far as weight and setup. And, you know, it's, you can kind of see the 4 fletch. It's those A hybrid 26s that are on there.
I love those, man. That arrow is beautiful. It really is. I
Yeah, I'll
love
tell you
four
what,
fletch.
I've always man, I've always had a 3 fletch, you know, with the different color fletch up. And And I kind of like the all white. It's clean and pretty attractive. So I'm not hating it.
Yeah, if I could show you my arrows, man, I'm running the Easton Axis 4 mils right now with it's a three fletch. It's got the bully veins on it, but I had built some Bloodsport Punishers before that, and I can't tell you how many wraps, how many veins, how many knocks, inserts, brought all that stuff that I was tinkering with that set of arrows. And I love a four fletch, but since I'm shooting, well, before the Eastons, I was shooting like 450. I just went with the three fletch.
Well,
Now,
my whitetail setup that I just got at the Mobile Hunting Expo from DCA. I don't know if you guys know DCA, Deer
oh
Cross
yeah,
Archery.
oh yeah.
They built some for me there, and that setup is probably going to be more like a 550. But those are a three fletch, just because it doesn't need to be, and that's a 300 spine. So, and I'm shooting. My carbon's 28 inches end to end, before I put a knock on there. So, it's actually spined even higher than that just because I'm cutting it shorter and working through that. And my bow's set up I was shooting like 64 pounds, and I cranked it up a little bit for Africa specifically. So it's up at 70 right now. So I should be all set for whatever comes in front of me outside of a Cape Buffalo.
Man, I was gonna ask you about those buffalo too. I was hoping that was on your list. I really was.
You know what? I'm getting a great deal on this hunt because it's actually kind of cool. I don't know if you guys want to get into this yet, or if you still want to talk about gear. So you tell me.
Yeah, no, let's talk about Africa, man. We could talk gear for hours. But I am curious about this Africa hunt.
So this camo company and the CEO Mike Austin reached out, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to talk to him. So I started talking to the Johan Smit, who runs Hunt Tech Pro. So Hunt Tech Pro is a TV show on Carbon TV and on YouTube TV, and it's the #1 hunting show in Africa, and it is one of the only African hunting shows that is on Carbon TV, and I think it's one of the top 5 hunting shows here. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. So on this trip, I think there's 6 of us going. It's the CEO of the camel company. It's me and Holden, the guy that you met, JD, who was shooting with us. One of the guys backed out last minute, and Mike called me and said, hey, is there somebody you want to know? So I'd never really met Holden before. I work with his girlfriend, and he jumped in on it with us. So it's the 2 of us. Josh Miller from Ohio, he owns Triple Point, which is the broadhead that I'm shooting. I think I was showing you, he's got some mechanicals that use rare earth magnets instead of any collars or rubber bands or any of that. And he's an engineer by trade. And some of the engineering that went into it's just kind of incredible. I'm shooting the fixed blade that they have. So he's going to be there with us testing some new products, which is how I'm going to get my hands on some of this new stuff that he's got. And then one other guy that's from the Georgia, I forget where he lives. He's over by Athens, I think. So we're going out there, and we're going to get to hunt, and it's going to be filmed. And normally a hunt like that's I'm getting it for close to half the price. And I'm going to get you'll see so many animals, and I got a package of 5 different animals from kudu, impala, gemsbuck, wildebeest, warthog, but this concession, this farm is known for a world-class sable. So if one of those walks out, I might have a difficulty not pulling back and sending it. And then it's going to be filmed, which is just kind of a cool thing, right? It's on their episodes are like 45 minutes to an hour, and they're kind of documenting the whole thing. So something I'll be able to look back forever and see and watch. And normally from what I've heard, if I wanted to go on a hunt to Africa and have somebody else film me, that would have cost me like an extra couple grand, I guess. So I'm pumped about it. I actually leave 2 weeks from yesterday. So this time, 2 weeks from now, I'll be driving from Johannesburg, a couple hours up to the concession, or actually right now I'll probably just be getting out of a blind. So it's a 15.5-hour flight, but man, I'm going out there for less than what a guided elk hunt would be out west.
That's
a flight, 5 animals, all the lodging, all the food, all the drinks. And yeah, it's one of those things that it was never even on my bucket list of like the thing I wanted to do, because I never even thought it was possible, like never even in the realm of possibility. So when it came up, I brought it up to my wife, and I'm already going on a bear hunt to Maine with my father-in-law, and we didn't get drawn for Kansas last year, so we're going to Kansas this year. And she was like, you know what? You can't say no, but don't go planning any trips for next year because you're using up all your points this year. So
Wow.
Sounds like my wife. Yeah, she tried.
That sounds like mine too.
Yeah, when I told her I was going out west, she was like, "Oh, okay, so that means you're not going to hunt here." I'm like, "No." Yeah, I was like, "I'm hunting. I'm definitely hunting." Yeah, dude. Honestly, I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I've never had any. I'm not gonna say never had any interest in going hunting over in Africa. I like deer too much. Like caribou, elk, muleys, moose, whatever. But I will say, if someone did, message me, be like, "Hey, man, we got this Africa hunt. We're gonna we want you to come with. Are you interested? Well, it's this price. It's usually this price, but and it was a good price. I mean, I'd go. Why not?
well, I'll tell you what, it's way more achievable, and I can tell you guys some prices offline or on. I don't know what the prices are, normally, but to be able to go out there for not that much more than what I'm going to Maine for bear, and to get a chance to just a cultural experience out there. Again, I never even considered it because I didn't even think it'd be possible. It was never on my list ever. Yeah, I knew I wanted to go elk hunting, and I knew I wanted to go mule deer hunting, and I'd love to kill a couple different species and subspecies of turkey at some point, but never thought Africa was possible. And I'm starting to get this like butterflies almost because it's getting so close. Because we locked this in like February, and I thought I had like 5 months, and the next thing I know, it's 2 weeks away. And I'm getting a little nervous about it, to be honest.
You'll be fine. Just don't run into any lions. It's the only thing I can tell you. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting the way they hunt there. They don't stay till like that last hour, right? You got to get out of there before it gets too dark because you are not the most dangerous thing in the woods like we are here, right? There's a lot of other animals out there that are trying to kill you as much as you're trying to kill some of them. So they don't want you walking in last light. So you actually hunt until about 30 minutes before the sun goes down, and that's when you're heading back in.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing. Like my wife and I have talked about it before, and I mentioned the whole Africa thing to her, and she's like, "Oh, I'll go with you. I just won't go hunt." I'm like, "What are you gonna do?" She's like, "I'll chill at the hotel and all this." I'm like, "All right, that's fine." But the biggest
I
thing
tried to get my wife to go with me because the prices are, it's like they only charge the lodge for non-hunters, like a spouse, and this is, like this great lodge, and they cook all the food and they do your laundry. It was like a couple $100 a day, like $200 a day to bring a spouse. So I could have brought my wife with me for less than what we could go there on a vacation for. And they can hang out at the lodge and do all the things, and go sightseeing or go on some of the rides on their buggies around with binoculars, or she can come sit in the blind with you and be there with you, and you get a chance to harvest an animal of a lifetime.
That's crazy. Yeah, I'm just honestly, dude, I have 4 cats and I've seen what they can do. So thinking of a 600-pound version of that.
I think I heard
you would.
I heard your cat on the last episode actually in the background when you and JD were bullshitting about bear shaft tuning or tuning broadheads or something like that. When JD was getting all the hate, but I heard the cat in the background on that one.
He does that every episode. I call it Smokey's
every episode.
I walk down the stairs and I get everything set up, and next thing you know, he's at the door and he's just the whole time. And I'm like, dude, I'm not letting you in, because if I do, he's gonna be sitting right here and walking all over everything. And it's just, I love him. But
I got a question on your Africa hunt.
Yeah.
And this one may be one that you may have not even thought about yet. And I'm just curious. Are you afraid that going after all this Africa hunt and you get a, trophy animal, are you afraid that you're not going to be the good old boy from Georgia hunting anymore? You're just now, after this hunt, going to be strictly the trophy chaser?
No, man, not, I can see where the question had come from, but, the woods is where I find my peace. Someone was asking me something about hunting and this and that. And I said, look, when's the last time you watched the sunrise? And when's the last time you watched the sunset? Because every fall I get to do that multiple times a week.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's nothing more beautiful than walking in at dark, climbing up in a tree stand or a saddle in a climber, and it's dead quiet. And then
Yep.
you see the sunrise and the woods start to wake up, the birds start chirping, the breeze starts blowing. Man, I could be out there when I was turkey hunting in Alabama this year. It was, I could have just sat there along the creek and had a great time being in the woods. I love all of it, man. The habitat management, the habitat improvement, food plot type stuff, sitting in the woods. Man, I'll just go out with a chainsaw and cut wood sometime just because I love being out there. When the environment that I work in, so I'm a regional vice president for a large healthcare practice that's based out of Atlanta. We have like 500 clinics across 26 states. And man, it's all the time, always on, always talking to people. People don't get it when they see me in a non-work setting, because at work I'm suited and booted, right? I'm suited up, shirt and
Right.
tie. And then when I'm not, I'm camo and flannels,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they don't always get it. So my peace, my church, my yoga, my meditation, all of that occurs in a tree stand in the woods. And that's the best part about it every single day. So to answer your question, no, because when I go to Kansas and I seen a 160, was I shaking? Yeah, you bet your ass. But when that 110-inch 2-year-old walks in Georgia, I'm still just as ecstatic. Anytime that first doe comes
Yeah.
out, I'm jacked. So to be honest,
Right.
I think I get that rush and I think I get that high anytime I experience that. Even after deer season this past year, we were out. I'm in a hunt club out in Sparta, and deer season was over, and we brought out this guy that runs beagles, and we just got to rabbit hunt the whole thing. But that morning they weren't coming out that morning, so I took my 22 out, and I was squirrel hunting. But it was also, you could shoot coyotes, and this big old male coyote comes out, and I got the same type of shakes on this male coyote predator that I would probably what I'm going to have in Africa. So, and again, it's not about the kill. It's about that experience. Don't get me wrong. I love killing shit and I love putting stuff on the wall. And I love providing meat for the family. But to give you an example of this, JD, I told you about my season last year, right? I shot a hog with my
Yeah.
bow. I shot 7 deer, 5 bucks across 3 states, shot that coyote. My favorite hunt of the year. And I'll tell you, it was a gun hunt. My 5-year-old wanted to go out with me. And I said, yeah, let's go. So we got in the little vehicle. We drove out, and we went and sat in a box blind, and man, we just dusted a couple does, and she was out there and she was next to me, and we just had an absolute blast, and she helped me track it. And she helped me, go through the whole process. And then when I brought it back home and I was processing in the garage, she was out there. That's the most memorable hunt that I had all of last year. And I killed 3 of the biggest bucks that I've ever killed in the same year. So it's
And that's
I
what
love
makes
it.
every single hunt. It's not the trophy, it's the memories. The memories is what makes the hunt. And it's just I've seen, and the only reason I ask you that is because I've seen I'm not going to name drop anything, but some local guys that will eventually make that out of the U.S. hunt, and then their head swells, and then they're not your typical go-to guys anymore, and it's just it seems to me like they lose it. And that was more so where the question was, is I just, I know you now, and I know your history, and I know your drive behind it and your memories behind all of them. And I hope you don't lose the same thing that they lost.
Man, I appreciate look, I've been pretty fortunate in my career with opportunities to have some success, and be successful. But I came from nothing, right? My father passed away before I was 2. My mom struggled with some addiction when I was growing up, and I went to 11 schools before seventh grade and moved around. And
Oh,
I
wow.
was at some point like almost a ward of the state, right? And
Wow, man.
so it's one of those that's never forgetting where you're from and where you're at. That look, you were at the house. You saw me geeking out. I think I sent you guys both this, but I wanted a bigger target, so I stopped losing arrows when I was trying to shoot at long distances. And even
Yeah.
though I'm going to Africa and I'm spending this money, I still didn't want to go spend money on a target. So I spent $10 and made a 4 foot by 4 foot large target and went around to
I
Home
love that
Depot
thing.
and was finding plastic to fill it with. And I only spent $10 on this target. So man, it's all about the roots, and it's always about remembering where you come from and why you do it, no matter what you're doing, whether it's hunting or whatever your hobby or passion might be. So, I mean, I think that's a great question. And I think it's something we all have to be really intentional about, of making sure that we remember why we do it and what we're doing. It's not for followers and or social
Right.
media or whatever this perceived lifestyle or fake ass shit that people put on Facebook half the time, Sorry for the
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
you're
I mean,
good.
don't get me wrong. This social media outlet that we have and that we're using, right now, it works and it's awesome. But I'm speaking for
Well,
myself
that's how we got
on this, but
connected, right?
this isn't right. But speaking for myself, and I'm pretty sure that Eric is 100% on this with me as well. We're not doing this for the fame and for the followers. This is for us in the community to be able to have ways to communicate and share stories and share our memories, because that's what is all hunting, is the memory base.
Oh,
And
100%. I
hopefully,
completely agree.
it helps one person get into the woods, or one person be a little bit more successful. Or if somebody hears the story about me taking
Yep.
my daughter out, maybe it gets them to take one of their kids out next year, and just kind of
Absolutely.
expands
Absolutely.
that hunting heritage and that culture of hunting. And man, we know we're losing hunters every single year. And I was listening to Waddy on the episode that you guys did, and I really appreciated what he had to say. It was a couple episodes ago, Eric, but he said something of, he's always going to be an advocate for anything in hunting and outdoors, even if he doesn't choose to do it or he doesn't want to do it. Anytime one right is taken away, whether it's a trail camera in a state you're never going to hunt, or it's crossbows or whatever it might be, I'm not going to use that, and I might not do that. But as soon as we lose one thing, it can be a domino effect, and you can start to lose more and more. And that's the biggest problem with the hunting community, is we spend more time bickering at each other than coming together, and actually trying to expand that heritage and that history that we're all talking about.
Yeah, the fact you say that makes me think of something that I wanted to talk to you about, because I completely agree, and JD knows exactly where I'm going with this. I'm not going to name drop, but I think I told you before we got on here about, I don't want to put this, a comment that was made about recent episodes talking about public land. Now, I will be the first to say public land is public land. I have as much a right as both of you do, as you do that I do. If I find a spot that is really good and I tell someone about it, I have a right to do that, just like I would tell you guys. The issue is somebody thought that by me mentioning where I hunt on public and maybe putting a little bit more detail in it than maybe they would, that it is going to ruin public land hunting, and that I'm part of the reason why public land hunting sucks. So my question to you is, what's your opinion on the whole public land stuff and people like saying, hey, I killed this really big deer on such and such WMA? It's not just the podcast that's getting stuff like that out there. I mean, Seek One, perfect example. Nobody knew there were giant deer in Atlanta. Now everybody knows. Are there still giant deer there? Yeah, maybe not as many, but there's still giant deer there. But that's private. Now we're talking public. I mean, we all pay for that land. It's all for everyone that wants to hunt. And I just have a problem with people that like to, sit there and say, oh, because you're saying is one specific spot, that you're the reason why it's all terrible. Like, I'm sorry, you may have lost your spot to someone else, but they had a right to be there, just like you have a right to be there. And I'm just curious what your opinion is on that when people start to try and throw blame at other people for, something that really they don't own that property more than the other guy.
I'm probably the person that overshares that, to be honest with you, because look, if I tell you about a spot where I saw a turkey in a WMA here in West Georgia, but I couldn't get on, and you go out there and kill it, man, I'm gonna be pumped for you. I'm gonna come have a beer with you, and we're gonna celebrate,
Yes,
right?
yes,
The
yeah.
problem is it's public, it's public land, meaning that everybody has the rights to it, not even just hunters, right? If
Yeah.
I'm in a tree stand and some lady comes by on a hike, she has just as much right to be. Do I think maybe she should know that it's deer season and people are out there with guns and bows? And she should probably, not be wearing her green yoga pants. Like, okay, cool. I might not think she's the most intellectual person because of that, but at the end of the day, she has the same right to be there. And that's the same person that'll end up complaining because, oh, we don't have enough public land to hunt, or the DNR isn't doing this for us, or the DNR isn't managing the deer herd, or they should change turkey tags.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with you acting like that, there's probably people that aren't hunting because of some of the negativity they've received from other people about something like that. So my buddies have this podcast up in Michigan. I think I've told you guys about it. And if you go on Generations to Hunt, look at all their reviews. Some guy left a 1-star review for that exact reason. Most of their stuff's all 4 and 5 stars, right? It's a good group of guys, but they were talking about a spot that is, it's a pumpkin patch. It's one of those areas that you'd never step on during gun season. And they were like, oh yeah, if you want to go see 15 hunters, just go out to, this public land. And somebody just was rage texting and messaging and gave them a 1-star review. And the reality is, if someone says, man, I killed this huge buck on this WMA in Alabama, or at the Talladega National Forest, or at the Paulding WMA, or whatever it might be, like, okay, that buck is dead. It's already dead. It's gone. Like, you already shot that deer. If people don't want to share trail cam pictures, that's fine. But man, I think it's a selfish short-term comment and a selfish short-term thought in a bad way of thinking about the long-term heritage in the chance that hunting is going to continue to have what it has going forward. And there's so much public land around us. And that public land section, it's not like it was a 30-acre section, right? It's probably 5,000 acres. Like, okay, the chances that just by you mentioning a spot that person's going to find your exact location in a 5,000, or like a Talladega National Forest is like hundreds of thousands of acres. Like, yeah, I told people I was out there turkey hunting. It's 100,000 acres, right? Like, or more than that.
Yeah.
It's got plenty of room. It's got plenty of room to hunt. And so I just think it's dumb, to be honest. I think if you guys end up going out to Kansas and you're like, hey, where to go? Like, I'm going to tell you what zone I was in or what unit I was in. And I hope you're successful out there. That's how my buddy got on the buck that he shot. It was a friend from back home in Michigan who'd hunted there a few years back, and he dropped us a pin on Onyx, that wasn't the property that he killed on, but it was the property I killed on. And then the one that he killed on was not too far away. Like, that's how we knew where to go. And if we can't help each other out because we want to be selfish about it, like, okay, then don't listen. Then that guy should stop listening to the podcast and go hunt by himself and get off of social media.
I completely agree. I wanted to say that, but I didn't want to be an asshole to him. Coming from me,
I'll be the asshole. I'll say it.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's my job.
Yeah, right. That is your job.
But there was one time I went out to Altoona WMA, and I went out there, dead silent early in the morning and pitch black. Sun came up. I was up in my climber, and sun came up, and it was within 200 yards. I saw 7 orange vests within a 200-yard circle of me. And it was one of those, yeah, it pissed me off, but there's nothing I could do. nothing I could do. And then, a couple hours later, a guy, shot a buck, and I went down there and helped him drag it out. I mean, cool, man. Awesome. Good for you. You got to celebrate with each other. Quit with this selfish bullshit.
I'll tell you what, I'm new to turkey hunting, right? And so this year I had a buddy come down and we went out to the Talladega National Forest, again, hundreds of thousands of acres. And we saw one hunter, and I'm new to calling, and I'm trying to practice different mouth calls. And I'm not very good at it, but I'm having a blast and I'm learning. I'm spending time outside. And we had split up, and I was on this ridge, and I was calling, and I heard another call, and I'm like, oh gosh, there's a turkey coming in, and it started getting closer, and I started getting closer, and I'm creeping over the hill, and it's another hunter.
You call in another hunter?
I did. I called that another hunter. I was like, well, at least my call sounds realistic enough that he thought I was another hunter.
God.
And we sat there and talked for a little bit. He'd found this nice 10-point deadhead in a creek bottom. Come to find out, he's a graduate student at the University of Alabama, and he was over here on a clinical and was trying to find a place to hunt. And he's a really experienced turkey hunter. And we walked out, and we were in deep, right? We ended up walking out probably a mile or so, and we chatted the whole time, met up with my other buddies. And after that, we started connecting on via text, and he invited me to come out and go fishing with him. And him and I are still connecting, and we're trying to find another time to go hunt together next year. That it's all about what you make of it. You can choose to be pissy and salty when you see somebody like that, or you can see it as an opportunity to get to know somebody that maybe you wouldn't otherwise got to know, that shares the same passion for public land hunting or for being in the outdoors that you do. Or you can be pissy about it and make an enemy and cuss somebody out and all that kind of drama. So I think there's just some people that
Karen,
are going to look at it one way or the other. And I choose to look at it in a way of, man, if there's somebody in the parking lot, that's going to challenge me. How do I learn how to hunt human pressure and hunt around them and use that to my advantage? If you guys ever listen to the Southern Outdoorsman podcast, right? The tactics that those guys drop are insane. And they were at the Mobile Hunting Expo. And that's one of the questions that I asked them, because they have some guests that come on that talk a lot about not just hunting the deer, but hunting the pressure of some of these guys won't go in at first light. They'll drive around to see where the other cars are parked, and they've scouted enough to know the exit funnels, and then they'll go hunt the exit funnels. And that's how they kill these huge deer, right? People pulling 150, 160 inch deer off of public land in the Southeast, largely off of hunting other people and where they're at and knowing where to go. So I think it makes you better. I think it makes it a little bit harder. And if you do it the right way, you can probably get to know some pretty cool people along the way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've never really seen anybody on public much, which is why I had such issue with him saying that, I was ruining it. Cause I'm like, dude, you apparently hunt the same WMA as me. And you're claiming that I'm ruining this place, but I've only seen one other person, and it was a squirrel hunter. So I don't know, man. It was one of those things just bothering me, but I don't want to keep you too long, but I do have a question before.
Yeah, I'm good. We can chat for as long as you need to.
I know my wife's getting hungry though. Yeah, the thing I'm curious about, you're from Michigan. Rumpola buck, real or fake?
So this is interesting. Man, I think it's real, and here's why. One of the guys that I've went to Kansas with that I hunt with forever, he had actually taken a deer to a processor that had his hands on that buck, that actually had pictures when he was scoring my buddy's deer. There was a file of the buck in there, and he actually had measurements, and he put his hands on it in Michigan and had put a tape on it. And I know there's a lot of controversy, and people are wondering, like, man, if he killed that buck, and it looks kind of weird. If you look back at some of the other bucks I think it's Mitch Rampola killed in that area, there's other bucks with the same type of features, right? With a bigger spread between the pedicles, with this massive width, not to that scale. and that guy was killing booners before. It's not like he came out of nowhere. Like he was a killer, and he was kind of off the record before. And it seemed like it turned into a money game. You know, he had to sign this non-disclosure agreement that he can't officially have it scored or put it into the books or publicize it until after that. What is it? The Hansen buck.
Yep.
As long as Hansen's alive, he can't share that information. So there's a lot of controversy on it. I think it's real because I've met some people that have had a chance to actually see pictures and see trail cam pictures before when it was alive, and then also see multiple year history of that buck. But it is weird that he's locked up in a cabin somewhere, not talking to anybody, and there's so much controversy on it. But if you were holding a gun to my head and asked me if I had to make a decision and put money on it, yeah, I think it's real.
Yeah, I've got
And also,
a guy,
in my heart, I want to think it's real, right? I want a deer like that to be real, and I want that to be because Michigan's not known as a big buck state, right? We're around all these big buck states, but the age class in Michigan, I think it's something like over 60% of the deer that the bucks that are killed are a year and a half or younger. And they're just not known for growing big deer. But when you think about Ohio and Indiana and Illinois and Wisconsin that are all around it, it should have the habitat for it. But the hunting heritage, kind of like Pennsylvania, there's so many hunters, and there's a lot of old school guys that are when they were growing up, if you shot a spike or a 3-point or a basket rack, that was a big deal because the deer population was low. But now the doe to buck ratios are like 6, 7, 8 to 1, and the age structure is just not as big as it is. But you see Michigan making some changes on some APRs or talking about one buck rule. And if they made some of those decisions, I think it would be one of these top 10 states. But I want it to be real, to know that I might run across something like that in the woods one day.
Yeah, I've got a guy up there who lives there, and if you've been listening to the podcast, we're doing a series on it I'm trying to do every month. It's kind of hard to make it happen, but yeah, he has a ton of information on it, man. And we've been going back and forth. I think the first episode we were kind of both saying, oh, we don't think it's real. Then the next episode we did, we were on all the reasons why it could be real. The next one we're going to do in a few weeks is going to be centered around why it couldn't be real. I mean, there's so many different things. Apparently Mitch is part of the Rumpola fan club group on Facebook. Someone posted that they figured out he's in it, but he's not going under his actual name. I mean, there's
really?
so many things. Yeah, dude, there's so many things going on with this deer that you being from Michigan, I just had to ask you. So
man, even the guys from Michigan, if you listen to some of the bigger podcasts out of Michigan, like the Fall podcast, right? That's like up there with WCB and some of these other ones. Even those guys can't agree on it. But I want it to be real. I hope it's real. But we might never know.
Yeah, I agree.
It's fun to talk about though.
Oh, for sure, dude. I love talking about it. That's why I asked Garrett Goodwin about it. He said he thinks it's real. I mean, anyone that's from Michigan or that's been in the industry, because I have asked a few of the guys I've met in the industry about it, and they don't want me to say what their answers were, but it is a very interesting story for sure. But look, I feel like it's a good spot to break this one off, and we're gonna have to get you back on again because we started super late, and I wanted to dive into so much more, but unfortunately, kind of running out of time here.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and it's been really cool to see the growth of the podcast and listen from episode 1 and listen to some of the different stuff. And it was great to shoot, JD with you the other day. So hopefully we'll all have to get together and shoot here, maybe do some hunts together. And I'd love to get back on when I get back from Africa and actually, share what it was actually like over there. Yeah, we need to do that. I want to hear about it. And a bunch of the other history you've had too with hunting. And yeah, man, we'll get together and shoot sometime. I mean, how busy life gets, so we'll make it happen. But who knows? Maybe we can go hunt together. I mean, if you're 10 minutes from JD, we've hunted his place last year, so we could maybe get something together. But you and I talk like pretty much every other day, so we'll figure something out. Sounds good. I appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, man.